it's your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today. We're focusing in a little bit more in depth on covert narcissism and triangulation, and essentially what occurs in a relationship when there is triangulation, when you feel basically like your back is up against the wall, when you're painted into an emotional corner, when you feel basically like, you're painted in the corner, you can't come out, you have to come out swinging in order to have any sort of validation or open communication, effective communication with a covert narcissist. And a covert narcissist is an individual who has an inflated sense of self-importance, or what we call a pathological sense of self-importance, and coupled with a lack of empathy. So someone who cannot really relate to, validate the feelings, needs, wishes, and desires of another. It just doesn't have any emotional life with them. It doesn't have any emotional importance. It doesn't have any emotional content, any continuity, any value. So it's just basically skirted over. It's ignored. It's swept away. It's minimized. It's treated as unimportant. And you are made to feel oftentimes unimportant for the things that you bring up. And so the issue then becomes the emotional meltdown system, basically where, you then have to overreact to get them to react. And then your emotional instability is now becoming the issue versus them attending to your needs. So it's the ultimate blame shift in the triangulation when other people are then brought in and, related to as in a more stable manner. They might reference other people or other qualities where they don't have to be accountable to this person. And, they might use this person, well, this person doesn't get upset, or, look at this in this person. And why can't you be more like that? So that oftentimes they'll use this subtle comparison. And this is a sort of subtle form of covert triangulation. And it's very difficult because I think what ends up happening is there's a blame shift. So rather than the covert narcissist being able to admit or come forth or open up and discuss that they have not been able to be there for you in a very specific, meaningful way, which you have brought up to their attention, i.e., I've been ignored, I've been invalidated, no one has helped me with this and this, and the burden is all on me here, and this isn't fair, and the expectations are here. So there's basically an imbalance or a feeling of injustice in the relationship. And so the individual oftentimes feel that they're constantly on trial for having to defend and justify their own needs. And eventually there's this, please listen to me, and your needs are valid. Your needs are real. Your voice is authentic. You are coming from a good and a real and an okay place. But the covert narcissist, because of their very limited, emotional vocabulary or their lack of empathy, they're just not able to have that discussion with you. They're not able to satisfy others in that way. It's not a good fit, oftentimes, for a lot of people to be in a relationship with a covert narcissist because they're of little words, of little emotion, of limited emotion, and they tend to be very sequestered or cloistered off by themselves, very retreating, and engage in a lot of very self-serving behaviors, a lot of time spent away, a lot of time spent in the basement, in the attic, in the garage, in their studio, wherever it is that they tend to retreat to, they're oftentimes just not present. And when they are present, they're not emotionally present. They're not emotionally available. They're not able to be discussed with. It's the ultimate, silent, strong and silent individual. And a viewer did ask, can there be the strong and silent type? And that's a very good question. Yes, there can be the strong and silent type. Some people who are of very few words, some people who are very more, intellectual, or what we call cerebral, where, they're very intellectual. They don't like to talk about emotions, or that's not their strong suit. They can be very supportive, very nurturing, very caring, very loving, and receptive and responsive to people's needs. In other words, they do have empathy. They get where you're coming from. You bring something up and they say, okay, in a very humble way. I think that's the essence of strong and silent type, is when they're able to validate they're able to validate where you're coming from. And, that's, they understand. And, even just being understood and being heard is a good thing. A covert narcissist, they're not going to be able to give much support for your needs. They're not going to really kind of be there to listen, to understand, to discuss, to work through. And it's not even that they feel threatened. I think oftentimes it's just that they feel that it's not important to them of their life. Not that it's necessarily beneath them, but they would just much rather be doing something else than trying to satisfy people's needs. I think they're kind of like the loner who's in a relationship. They just they're not they don't have an empathy. They're not able to kind of like understand people's needs. They're not able to validate it. And so if you don't feel validated, you don't feel listened to, you feel like they're not getting you, they're not seeing you, you almost start to then feel depersonalized or invisible, or what we call gaslighted, where you kind of feel like you're in some different world. It's kind of like welcome to my world kind of feeling when you're around this individual, and it becomes more and more and more defined and distinct and separate with time. So that's why I think over in the covert relationships where it's basically been decades, and then just their covert narcissism has been very defined, and here they are in this little room, and they're just kind of away, and you're just kind of like trying your best to communicate and be friendly and open up and have a heart-to-heart connection, and be validated, have that approval, have that belongingness, have that connection, and they can't oftentimes give that. But whereas the strong and silent type, I think that they can give that. They're just people of very few words, but yet you have a feeling of emotion of love and acceptance and compassion, and you feel a sort of respect for these individuals because they respect you. And the covert narcissists, they're harboring other thoughts about people, events, and things which they don't share. So they tend to harbor these very strong criticisms, and not necessarily that they don't share them, but they will kind of let you know that they're disappointed in very few words, and it can be very hurtful and exploitative of people, because then you then have spouses who are trying to bend over backwards to please these people, and they're not able to have a connection. There's a real communication breakdown, and then that causes that emotional meltdown, usually from the individuals, and then they're like getting the bad rap because it's like, well, you're the one who's having the emotional meltdown, and so it's the blame shift onto those individuals. And I know a lot of people who suffer from that situation, and so realize it's very important for you to articulate that, know your needs, and furthermore expand and be with people who can validate you and who can reflect back who you really are, and really be supportive in that way, and help guide and direct you to, you can experience more of that happiness and fulfillment in life, where you are able to just be yourself versus feeling like the criticized version that the covert narcissist projects onto you. Peace and harmony with you here today. I hope these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.